The grand experiment, what Tesla FSD12 can tell us about the state of AI that we're in the middle of right now. Hi, I'm Jameson Rotz, CEO at Nearly Human AI, where we specialize in high quality, high ROI enterprise AI automations. AI is really just the result of a great transition that we're in the middle of in terms of the information age. For the longest time, up until 5 to 10 years ago, the vast majority of all computations and computer software was run on what we call expert or rules-based systems. It's the if this, then that type of programming where you have a discrete set of input information, a discrete set of logic, and then output conditions based on the input data and the logic. And this is what we built basically everything that we've used since the 60s until recent years when we've transitioned into machine learning, where instead of having rote logic inside of the code, now we're using stochastic, probabilistic systems built on statistics to look at large volumes of data to understand how the system should respond to a given situation. And so there's benefits and drawbacks to both things. When you need a deterministic outcome, the rules-based systems do the same thing under the same circumstances every time. That also means that as things change over time, that code has to be updated to reflect those changes. The benefit of machine learning is that as the data changes, as the world in which the system operates changes, as that's fed, it can automatically retrain itself so that it can react differently to data and scenarios that it encounters based on the latest information that it has. But the problem with machine learning is that it's not deterministic. You don't always get the same or exactly the same outputs given a particular scenario. And the reason is because under the hood, it's all operating on probabilities. And slight changes in the data can actually throw off the outcomes, either in a minor or sometimes in a major way. So we've been working with these machine learning systems for about the past 12 years and actually implementing them into large businesses, government agencies, and the enterprise. And what has always been the case with all of these is that there is some level of quality gap where there's just error inherent in the system based on the quality of data that's going into it and the algorithm's ability to interpret that information and then provide results given the data that's fed into it. We've seen from the early days that be, a 50 or 40% error rate to more of the LLMs and generative AIs might be closer to a 15%, sometimes 10% error rate. So the algorithms have gotten dramatically better. We're able to use and consume way more training data than ever before. And all this has led to higher quality. But at the root of it, these systems are based on probabilities and statistics. And so they're always going to operate at their highest and best in the middle of the sort of bell curve of data. The technology is inherently terrible at handling edge cases because they're statistically rare. And when compared with what to do, sometimes they can be overwhelmed by the middle majority of the data that comes through. And there's all kinds of mathematical and data science methods to balance data and bring in either synthesized or supported edge case data. But the problem is when you do that, one of two things happens: either you overfit with the synthesized data, which is a major issue, or you actually end up like hurting the quality of the results when you're within the middle of the bell curve on your data in order to try to pick up these edge cases. So one of the most interesting experiments that I've been watching very carefully is the rollout of Tesla FSD12. Prior to FSD12, the self-driving systems at Tesla were a combination of machine learning and expert systems. It's discrete logic on what to do when. And to this day, Waymo uses a hybrid system like that with a lot of rules-based software and some machine learning software. But when Tesla went to FSD12, they changed this to an entirely machine learning system, which is a bold move. especially when you're talking about a safety critical system. So I've been watching it because on one hand, Tesla has more driver data than any other company on the planet because they've been doing it the longest and they have the most cars out there. BYD is arguably catching up, but but in terms of like the sophistication of the sensor fitting on a Tesla and the number of driver miles that they have data on, they're really unparalleled. So if anybody were going to be able to use a fully machine learning system to make safe self-driving that can happen on any road in any set of weather conditions, it seemed that it would be Tesla. But that error and the trouble that these algorithms have with edge cases always bother me when it comes to these safety critical driving systems. So I've been watching it, and truthfully, as we're going on, delays to full self-driving are nothing new. We've been 2 years away from automated driving for something like the last 10 or 12 years. And we're probably more than 2 years away from it outside of small defined areas like what Waymo is doing. But at any rate, there are problems occurring with the driver system in the Teslas that are going to be very difficult to weed out to the level of certainty that's required for a safety critical driving system. And I think this really speaks to something that we're seeing happen in our area of technology, which is the large language modeling and generative AI space. We're starting to see a plateau of these large language models. And again, it's to be expected. We have sort of exhausted the quality data and the algorithmic innovation. I shouldn't say exhausted, but we've certainly like reached a level where the next large step function is probably going to require more than just incrementally improving what we have now. And I think that all of this is due to the nature of how these machine learning systems work. And so as we plan what we're going to be doing for our clients over the next 2 years, there's sort of like two themes that we're looking at. One is that there's much less benefit in just waiting on hyperscalers to make the next release and expecting that that's going to create a lot of added value. We have strategically waited on implementing things over the past 2 years, that ideas and use cases that we had, because we sort of expected that the newer versions of the model would correct these things, and a lot of times they did. And those were good decisions that we made to not invest the time and money into developing that technology when the underlying model was eventually able to take care of the issues that we were seeing. But now we're getting to this period where the incremental benefit of the systems that you'll be implementing within your enterprise is largely going to come from the system that you build around the large language model. And so getting after that now is a really good strategic move. There's not going to be a lot of benefit in waiting as you go. If you see areas where the state of the art right now provides substantial value, for us, one of the easiest and highest ROIs that we see within organizations is the management of like policy and procedure and quality control and compliance. These are areas where there's a lot of sort of like oversight and advisement that has to go on. And we've been able to create systems that can handle these things and drive hallucinations down to zero by looping in human experts when our systems detect that the model is likely to make a mistake. And those are the kind of things that that are really going to pay dividends. That can't, by definition, this involves your in-house experts as well as the technology. So that's not something that's going to be overtaken by some kind of technological advancement that comes along. And I don't believe that anytime soon we're going to be in a place where we're going to have such a high level of quality with the generative AI that you're actually going to be able to like let your entire staff run loose with this and expect that they're not going to make mistakes. We continue to see improvements in code generation and a lot of various verticals within the AI space, but a lot of that now has to do with making these products more specific and creating tooling around them that improve accuracy for that specific use case. So, as you think about your AI strategy for the next 12 to 24 months, the two themes that I want to encourage everybody to think about is just kind of assume that the level of quality that we're seeing right now is probably nominally going to be the same 2 years from now as it is today. And under that assumption, look for your high ROI implementations and go put them in place so that you can gain the productivity boost that you can get from this technology um, at the same time or ahead of your competition so that you don't get overtaken. And finding what those use cases are typically going to look like is if you have repetitive tasks where you have good data defining what that repetitive task should look like, but you have a hard time getting uh, consistent implementation from your staff. Those are typically excellent opportunities to take a large language tool and build it into your process flow. And that's what we specialize in. So I would love to hear someone steelman any of these assertions. I've been talking to people in the industry, and most of the time, when I do, there is sort of a belief that things are going to continue to improve at a fast pace. But when I push people on the subject and I start to talk about like how that might actually happen from a low lying technical level, they typically tend to soften their position and moderate around the speed at which we'll see these technologies improve. If you're out there working on these projects and you see the next step function right ahead of you, please comment back and challenge me on any of this. I'd love to hear your insights and opinions around this. If you're an enterprise looking to get your strategy together and implement AI in a way that's really making you money, there's a lot of pilots that have gone on that for one reason or another just aren't achieving the ROI that you'd like to see out of them. We can certainly help you identify the areas where you're going to be able to achieve our high ROI and get you implemented really quickly. In the banking space, we have a product that we can roll out in less than a week and get you to 70% automation around compliance, policy, and procedure. And we can do that. We can help you do that in other industries as well. So reach out to me here on LinkedIn or find us at nearlyhuman.ai. And until next time, I wish you the best.